Rob, you saw Prey recently.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
I did. Sorry.
Speaking of another game.
I thought that was going to happen a little bit later, but I'm Prey, man.
Sorry.
Yeah, Scott Butterworth and I, we saw the first hour of what is led to believe as the full game, which was kind of frustrating, or I would say unfortunate, because the first half hour of the game is kind of like just like half hour of the game, a story beat, and then it wasn't until about halfway through that hour was when you actually got to kind of experiment, right? Mm-hmm. So this is very much like a Dishonored, BioShock, all these different like real clear but tasteful, I would say, inspirations. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I had a pretty good time with it. It was kind of endearing in a way where I wanted to continue to play that. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see any of if you've seen any of the gameplay trailers, the powers you get to eventually kind of take from these creatures called Typhons. Mm-hmm. And
those are like the aliens in the game.
Right? Those are the aliens in the game that board this science lab space station and tear it apart. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the gameplay trailers were so cool. You just turn into a cup. Mm-hmm. And then use kinetic energy to launch yourself over a wall. But we didn't get to see any of that. So it was very just kind of immediate core abilities you kind of have.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about, you touched on it, how it's influenced by BioShock. Then you go even back in farther. BioShock was influenced by, System Shock 2, which Ken Levine, it was his first big game he worked on. Prey is being made by Arcane Studios, which of Dishonored fame, Dishonored 2 fame, with Harvey Smith and Ralph Colantonio, the latter of which is the one heading up Prey. And obviously this is the reboot they had. There was that whole controversy when Pete Hines from Bethesda said something about, no, Arcane's doesn't have rights to Prey 2, but then it turned out it was kind of just, facetious because they had the reboot they were working on. Anyway, they have Prey, the reboot now, and it looks great, and it looks like BioShock, and it looks like System Shock. It goes back to the Looking Glass days, if you're familiar with System Shock or Ultima Underworld. Back in the 90s, this first-person immersive choice, consequence-driven sim, I guess they describe it as, which is like Dishonored. You have all these abilities, you have these different ways that these levels can unfold. There's that 0451 code. That's the number that's in all these games from Ray Bradbury's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Fahrenheit 451. So BioShock, it unlocks a door. Thief, it unlocks a chest, I believe. Thief, made by Looking Glass as well. And Ion Storm, who did Deus Ex, Harvey Smith worked on it. It's in there as well. And it's in Dishonored 2. It's just very often a code that opens a safe or anything. It's just in reference to Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, the temperature at which books burn in that book, in that story. But that's a really cool Easter egg in all these games. That's actually what I want to talk about. All the games I just mentioned, kind of how they're influencing Prey, and even you go back to Dishonored 2, but Prey, despite the fact that it's by Arcane, it looks very different, right? Obviously the sci-fi elements, the more horror elements than Dishonored, but in terms of the choice and consequence-driven gameplay with how these different powers can unfold and whatnot, it looks really cool. And the fact that Prey is an open world on this space station, whereas Dishonored was these discrete levels, is also different structurally. But I really want to talk about, because I know, Callie, you're a really big shooter fan as well.
I am.
And I'm assuming you played BioShock. Mm-hmm. And did you ever get the chance to try out System Shock or anything back in the day? Or
No, I'm a baby.
Yeah,
I'm very young.
I didn't play it until recently. I didn't beat it. It's pretty tough. It's not as accessible anymore. But they're doing the remake up in Portland, I believe. I forget the name of the developer. I'll look it up. And yeah, we are looking at this right now. And
so I did a video today, and I'm really happy with it because, for one, I haven't done a video feature in a while, and this was really fun to look at. So I believe this is Timur and Lucy's video, and I kind of did a touch on basically just these guys right here called mimics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they are it's kind of just unfortunately segue. They're really unique. I've never really seen an enemy that essentially makes you approach an open room and go, okay.
Right here, this is great.
Okay, so watch this right there.
Yeah.
Three of them.
Flower pot, that
three of them
camcorder, and the
pot,
flower.
Yeah, a pot, a flower, and a radio. So that happens a couple times where you approach a room and they all kind of cooperate and will wait. One time I killed one of them and then was all right, cool. The room is now cleared. Mm-hmm. And later on they were in a corner the whole time. Three of them just waiting, and then they attack and really messed me up. So it's this really unique idea of like what's the purpose of actually like knocking over a object on a table in like any other game, right?
Right.
Here
Yeah.
it's like there's a purpose because you're trying to see which one of them is an actual like alien.
Yeah, Scott Butterworth, the editor who went with you to the preview event, he was saying that it kind of plays with your expectations of physics in games, or even just the environment. How
Right,
you kind
yeah,
of
he
take
said
it
it
for
best,
granted
yeah.
that these physics objects can like just roll around, but now you're actually paying attention because it could be a threat, which is awesome.
Right. Like you look at the room one way the first time you enter it. So it's level design that's like 2 for 1. Like it fits 2 different purposes.
Yeah.
So the second time you look at once you think you've cleared the room, then
Right.
you're like, okay.
It's such a great way to fit into the horror of the game.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
like always uneasy.
It's exactly that. And then there's also the side component of sometimes these mimics are a little obvious when like you go in a room and like you eventually start learning like how to like, investigate. So you'll see like a pair of shoes and then there's an extra shoe.
Last 3 shoes.
Last time I checked, most people have 2 feet, and sure enough, he's one of those guys. But it's like they panic because like they'll sometimes if they're by themselves they'll scatter and try to basically like quickly. It's like okay, what's in the room? Shoe.
Yeah, for those in the
great.
Love
YouTube
it.
chat, really quick, Anvil One Gaming, Ryan Schubert here at
Oh,
GameSpot
nice.
just posted Rob's feature video, the YouTube link. So check that out. Check that out after the show. Copy that, paste it into your browser, and check that out. Not now. It's a good feature, but I'd rather you watch us talk right now.
Yeah, but so anyways, touching back,
Stay here.
so these guys are original, but yeah, back to like the inspirations. I would say for me the first one was in light of like BioShock. It was being underwater, right? And seeing this place crumble. One of the first things this game does, Prey, is you kind of first get to a big open area, and then part of the space station just explodes, and you see all this stuff just eject into the death of space. And right away, you're kind of thinking about that, right? And so it's that claustrophobic tendency as well that you kind of are always thinking about in that game. It's very similar to BioShock in that way.
Yeah, it seems like the logical evolution of Rapture underwater, Columbia from BioShock Infinite in the sky, and then you go back to System Shock, which is also on a space station. It's these games really love taking these isolated communities and showing how to be a pessimist, humans are always going to fuck it up, right? Rapture was
It's a lot of dystopian and sci-fi
Sure.
stuff is about humans fucking stuff up.
Yeah, and I was playing the BioShock collection recently on PS4, and I was watching the developer commentary from back in the day when Jeff Keighley interviewed, I believe it was Nate Robinson and Ken Levine for these commentaries, and they were saying Rapture, in large part, aside from they actually thought of doing an underwater city before they decided to make it like this dystopian, Ayn Randian, kind of like Gulch, if you've read Atlas Shrugged, this isolated community of the brightest minds in the world, and how they just devolved into this dystopia. But they actually did Rapture at first because they wanted you to feel like you were actually confined in this world. That they used the metaphor, I think they were in New York when they were doing the interview, so they were saying, we didn't want you to look over and see New Jersey and feel weird that you couldn't go there. We want you to look out into the water and know you're trapped and just accept what you're seeing, which this space station seems like the next logical evolution of that, which is pretty cool in my mind. Like Tacoma is releasing by the Fulbright Company in sometime this year. They haven't announced the release date yet, but there's that vein of games that does that really well. Even Dishonored, if you want to talk about like well-designed worlds, you have Eve, which kind of like fuels your plasmids in BioShock, and then you have Adam, which is what they pull from the slugs on the seafloor, which powers the Eve.
Yeah.
I might be butchering that a little bit, but then there's always this like very well-formed world in these games, and it's integral to how the mechanics work, right? It's whale oil, it's a whaling community in Dishonored, but also your powers come from the Outsider, I believe his name is, who gives you the supernatural powers like Blink and Far Reach and everything. And I think these games are kind of, back in the 90s, they were really ahead of their time, but I think I'm really excited because, Dishonored 2, and from what it looks like, Prey are kind of bringing that back. Right, and I'm really excited to see how Prey will unfold in this open world, not in the sense of like Breath of the Wild or Horizon, but this open mission within the space station that you're exploring.
Right, rather than discrete,
Right.
distinct.
Yeah,
areas.
Dishonored 2 had those 9 missions, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it unfolds.
Yeah, I guess in this case they would be neuro mods that you find in the game.
Oh,
And
it sucks. You have to.
It does kind of suck. I was thinking about the other day. It was like, well, if he's doing this, how many dozens of times? Like your eye, essentially, it's like a looking glass.
Dead Space 2 kind of thing.
Got 3 like long ass needles. It's like okay,
Yeah.
in your eye.
Imagine just taking like a telescope.
I can open doors.
Or yeah. I can turn into a cup now. It looks unsettling. I don't love stuff to do with my eyes. I value them.
No.
And I don't like poking myself in the eye, let alone stabbing me. Well, if I could change into a fucking microphone, I would stab myself in the eye in an instant.
I feel like the better
You
way
would?
the better way would be
Maybe
up
not
your
a microphone.
nose, right?
Yeah.
But if you butchered that, you could actually kill yourself. Because you would just hit your brain.
Apex Penguin.
That's what you're doing, right? You're still going, who knows? Yeah.
Apex Penguin just said the outsider of Dishonored started out as the Penguin in Gotham, and when Batman finally killed him, he pledged his eternal soul to the darkness. So there's your lore for Dishonored. You learn something new every day. That's mine for the day.
Now you're
Yeah.
done. You're done learning for the rest of the day.
Turning my brain off. For all intents and purposes, I'm really, really excited for Prey. I was just tweeting the other day about how it might be my most anticipated game this year, despite the fact that Breath of the Wild's on the horizon and Horizon's on the horizon. But I love Zelda, and it looks like it'll be a fantastic game. But right now, I'm excited for Prey. May 5th, I believe it releases.
Yeah.
I really love everything Arcane does. Even like going back to Arx Fatalis days, their kind of breakout hit. I mean, Dishonored was kind of their breakout hit in 2012, but Arx Fatalis earlier, 6 years before that or something, was kind of their showing their stuff. Because they worked on BioShock 2 a little bit as well.
Right. I love a good sci-fi. I really hope that the sci-fi setup holds up throughout the game. Like I'm super excited to see how that goes and how it meshes with the gameplay and the kind of different kind of mission that you're going on, as opposed to, like we mentioned, Dishonored.
Definitely. I'm really looking forward to it. Even like seeing maybe some Dead Space influences outside of the eyeball stabbing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, some of the later horror elements, I believe, the creatures, I guess you could count on them progressively getting more and more intense. And there's one called Nightmare.
Yes.
And
This sounds awesome.
You've seen the gameplay of it. It's just giant like gorilla, but it can like still manage to like creep under doors. But essentially, as you eventually get powers and use the powers like that are from the aliens, that dude like senses it.
Yeah.
So it's that like
He hunts you like
He will
the Nemesis
hunt
if you played Resident Evil 3.
Exactly.
It's like a procedural thing from what I understand.
Yeah.
And also, one of my favorite pieces of trivia about BioShock 2 is that initially Jordan Thomas, who led development, and people like Steve Gaynor at the Fulbright Company and Carla Zamonia, who are at the Fulbright Company now, who worked on BioShock 2, the initial intent with the Big Sisters, which if you played BioShock 2, which is one of the most underrated games of all time, I will stick by that.
Whoa.
The Big Sisters were not going to be multiple Big Sisters. It's going to be one that hunted you the whole time, procedurally. And that sounded awesome, but they ditched that because they didn't think people would be like okay with that in a BioShock sequel. Because the BioShock fans who came into BioShock 2 would be like, this is fucking hard and terrifying. I don't want to deal with this.
Right. They ended up just making it like story beats, right?
Sounds like
Yeah.
they're going for that with the Nightmare later on in Prey, though, which sounds awesome.
That's awesome.
does.
Which will just further increase the terror you feel when that ladder in our studio could be a mimic.
or when you it's turned into rats and just scattered.
No, every time you walk into a room, you see a mimic like become a trash can really quick.
Yeah.
It's just like a little kid who's like, if I close my eyes, they won't see me. It's really funny.
No, it'd be great to be like a cup, right? And then that guy comes in the room. Sees you.
Nope.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm really excited for Prey, and I'm excited to see how BioShock, System Shock, Deus Ex kind of, and Arcane's other work on Dishonored kind of transfers over to it. So let us know your thoughts. Kelly Plague on Twitter, Rob Handler on Twitter, Mike Mahardy on Twitter. I think we're all pretty excited for this game, so let us know what you think.